The wind moved low across the plains, carrying dust, whispers, and the kind of silence that makes a man uneasy even when nothing seems wrong. Out there, where the land stretched so far it swallowed the sky, people learned quickly that trouble did not always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it stood still, waiting, watching, like it had all the time in the world. The cowboy knew that kind of silence. He had been riding for days without much rest, his horse tired beneath him, his coat stiff with dust and sweat. The sun had burned his neck raw, and his canteen had gone dry before noon. Still, he kept moving. Men like him did not stop unless they had to, not out here. That was when he saw the smoke. It rose thin and steady into the pale sky, not like a wildfire, but like something controlled. A camp, maybe a tribe, maybe trouble. He slowed his horse without thinking, his hand brushing near the grip of his revolver. He had learned long ago that not every meeting on the plains ended with a handshake. As he drew closer, shapes began to form, tents, horses, people moving with purpose. It was a Lakota camp, larger than most he had seen, and far too organized to ignore him. By the time he realized he could not turn away unnoticed, a group of warriors had already stepped forward. They did not raise their weapons, but they did not need to. Their eyes were enough. The cowboy raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. His voice came calm, though his chest felt tight. He said he was just passing through, looking for water, maybe a place to rest his horse. Nothing more. No one answered him. Instead, they guided him forward, deeper into the camp, past watching faces and quiet murmurs. Children peeked from behind their mothers. Elders sat still, observing. The air felt heavy, like something important was about to happen and everyone already knew it but him. At the center of the camp stood a man unlike the others. He was older, his presence strong even in stillness. Feathers crowned his head, and his clothing carried stories the cowboy could not read, but could feel. This was no ordinary man. This was the chief. The cowboy dismounted slowly, boots hitting the dry earth. He gave a small nod, respectful but careful. He had seen enough to know that respect could mean the difference between life and death. The chief studied him for a long moment without speaking. It was the kind of look that stripped a man down to what he really was. No lies, no pretending, just truth. "You ride alone," the chief finally said. The cowboy nodded. "That's right. You are far from where your kind usually travels. I go where the road takes me." A faint shift passed. Through the watching crowd, some faces hardened, others remained unreadable. The chief took a slow step forward. "And what does the road want from you today?" The cowboy hesitated. It felt like a question with more than one meaning. "Just water," he said. "And a little rest." The chief said nothing at first. Then he turned slightly and motioned. From the edge of the circle, someone stepped forward. At first, the cowboy did not understand what he was looking at. The figure was wrapped in light-colored clothing, simple but detailed with careful stitching. A veil covered the face completely, falling down to the chest. Hands were folded in front, still and quiet. A woman. Or at least he thought so. The camp grew quieter, if that was even possible. Even the wind seemed to pull back. The chief's voice came steady, but there was something beneath it. Something heavy. "You ask for water, for rest. These things have a cost." The cowboy's jaw tightened slightly. He had expected this. Nothing came free out here. "Name it," he said. The chief looked toward the veiled figure, then back at the cowboy. "You will marry my daughter." The words landed hard, like a sudden drop in the ground beneath his feet. For a moment, the cowboy thought he had heard wrong. But the silence around him told him otherwise. No one laughed. No one questioned it. This was real. He glanced at the veiled woman. She had not moved, not even a little. The cowboy swallowed slowly. "That's a heavy price for a drink of water." The chief's expression did not change. "Or you may leave." That seemed simple enough on the surface. But something in the way it was said made it clear it was not a true choice. The cowboy looked around. The warriors stood closer now. Not threatening, but ready. The camp itself felt like it had closed in on him without taking a single step. Leave, he could try. He could mount his horse, turn, and ride. But he knew the truth. He would not make it far. Not in this condition. Not with his horse near collapse. and certainly not with so many eyes watching his every move. He looked back at the chief. "You're asking a stranger to take your daughter as his wife," he said carefully. "I am giving you a path," the chief replied. The cowboy exhaled slowly, trying to think past the pressure building in his chest. This was not how he imagined his day going, or his life for that matter. Marriage was not something he had ever planned for, not out here. Not with someone he did not know, someone he could not even see. He glanced again at the veiled figure. There were whispers in the air now. Quiet, but present. The kind that carried judgment, curiosity, maybe even pity. Then one word slipped through clearer than the rest. Ugly. It came soft, but it reached him. The cowboy's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not know who said it, or if it was meant for him to hear. But it stayed there, hanging between him and the choice in front of him. He looked at the chief. "Why is her face covered?" The chief's gaze did not waver. "That is not for you to question," the answer told him enough, or at least it told him what the camp believed. The cowboy ran a hand over his jaw, feeling the rough stubble there. His mind raced, weighing things that did not seem like they should ever be weighed together. Water, survival, freedom, a stranger's life tied to his. Or death on the open plains. He had made hard choices before. But this one felt different. This one felt like it would follow him long after the dust settled. "Say I agree," he said slowly. "What then?" The chief nodded once, as if he had been waiting for that. "Then you will be welcomed, you will eat, you will rest, and you will become part of this camp, part of this camp." The words felt heavier than they should. The cowboy looked down at the ground for a moment. The dirt was cracked, dry, unforgiving. Just like the choice in front of him, he thought about the miles behind him, the empty nights, the cold mornings, the constant moving, never staying long enough to belong anywhere. Maybe this was just another turn in the road, or maybe it was something else entirely. He lifted his head. "I'll do it," he said. The reaction was immediate, though still quiet. A shift in the air, a release of tension, some faces softened. Others watched him more closely than before. The chief gave a slow nod. "Then it is done," the veiled woman stepped forward. For the first time, the cowboy noticed the small details. The way her hands trembled just slightly. The careful way she moved, like every step had been practiced 100 times. There was something there that did not match the whispers he had heard. Something he could not place. They stood facing each other now, close enough that he could hear her breathing beneath the veil. The chief raised his hand, signaling the moment. "This union begins now," he said. The cowboy felt the weight of every eye in the camp pressing into him. He had agreed. There was no turning back now. The chief stepped closer to his daughter. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for the edge of the veil. The cowboy felt his chest tighten without knowing why. Around them, the entire camp seemed to hold its breath. The wind stilled. The fire crackled softly nearby. And as the chief began to lift the veil, the cowboy realized something deep in his gut. Whatever he was about to see was not going to be what he expected. Not even close. The edge of the veil lifted just enough for a breath to pass beneath it. Then the chief stopped. Not fully, just for a moment, but long enough for the pause to settle deep into the bones of everyone watching. His hand held the fabric lightly, as if even he understood that once it was raised, something would change that could not be undone. The cowboy did not move. He kept his eyes fixed forward, though his instincts told him to brace for something. He had heard the whisper, ugly. It circled in his mind, mixing with the silence, growing heavier by the second. The veil rose higher. And then the chief let it fall back down. A quiet murmur spread through the crowd, confusion passing from one face to another. Even the cowboy blinked, unsure of what had just happened. The chief turned away slightly, his expression unreadable. "Not yet," he said. The words felt final. The cowboy frowned, a small crease forming between his brows. "I thought this was part of it." "It is," the chief replied. "But not for now." That was all he offered. The tension did not break. It only shifted, stretching into something stranger, harder to understand. The cowboy glanced at the veiled woman again. She had not reacted, at least not in any way he could see. Her posture remained steady, her hands still folded. But something had changed. He could feel it. A few of the warriors stepped forward, guiding him away from the center of the camp. No one spoke as they led him toward a smaller area near the outer edge. A place set aside, not quite inside, not quite outside. A fire burned low there, and beside it sat an older man with sharp eyes and a quiet presence. He did not look up right away, but when he did, it felt like he already knew everything that had just happened. "You chose to stay," the old man said. The cowboy gave a small nod. "Looks that way." The old man studied him for a moment, then gestured for him to sit. "Then you should eat." A wooden bowl was handed to him. The food was simple, but it smelled better than anything he had tasted in days. He did not hesitate. For a while, the only sound between them was the quiet scrape of the spoon and the crackle of the fire. "You are not afraid?" the old man asked after some time. The cowboy swallowed, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "I didn't say that," the old man almost smiled. "Good, a man who feels no fear is a fool." The cowboy leaned back slightly, glancing toward the center of the camp where the gathering had begun to disperse. "What's this really about?" he asked. The old man did not answer right away. He poked at the fire with a small stick, sending a few sparks drifting into the air. "You came at a time when the camp is not at peace," he said finally. "I figured as much. There are things happening," the old man continued. "Things that do not follow the ways we understand." The cowboy raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like trouble no matter where you're from," the old man nodded. "It is." A gust of wind passed through, carrying with it the faint sound of distant voices. Somewhere a child laughed, but it did not last long. The cowboy looked back at him. "And the marriage?" The old man's gaze shifted, just for a moment, toward where the veiled woman had stood before. "That is part of it." "Part of what?" The old man met his eyes again. "A choice." The cowboy let out a quiet breath. "Feels like I didn't have much of one." "You had more than most," the old man said. That answer did not sit right, but the cowboy let it pass. He had learned that pressing too hard too soon could close doors that might open later. Night began to settle over the camp, the sky turning deep and endless above them. Fires burned brighter now, casting long shadows that moved with the wind. He was given a place to rest, a small shelter near the edge. It was not much, but it was enough. His horse had been taken care of, watered and fed. That alone made the deal feel less like a trap and more like something else. Still, the weight of it all stayed with him. As he lay back staring up at the dark sky, sleep did not come easily. His thoughts kept circling back to the moment at the center of the camp. The chief's hand lifting the veil, then stopping, the murmurs. The strange look in the old man's eyes. And the woman. Something about her did not fit the story he had been given. The whispers did not match the feeling he had when she stood close to him. There had been something steady there. Something controlled. Not shame, not fear, something else. The next morning came quiet. The camp moved with purpose as it had the day before, but now there was a subtle shift. People watched him more openly. Not with hostility, but with curiosity. Some nodded as he passed. Others turned away quickly. He found the old man again near the same fire. "You did not leave," the old man said. "I told you I wouldn't. Many say that. Few mean it." The cowboy crouched down near the fire. "So what happens now?" The old man looked toward the center of the camp. "Now you learn." "Learn what?" "What it means to stay." That answer was not helpful, but before the cowboy could press further, a figure approached. It was her. The veiled woman moved with the same careful steps as before, but in daylight the details stood out more. The stitching on her dress was precise, almost too precise. The bracelets on her wrists were not just decoration. They carried symbols, markings that told a story he could not yet understand. She stopped a few steps away. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then she tilted her head slightly. "You are not what I expected." Her voice was soft but clear. The cowboy blinked, caught off guard. "I could say the same." A faint pause followed, as if she was considering that. "You had the chance to leave," she said. "Why did you stay?" He shrugged lightly. "Didn't seem like much of a chance." "That is not an answer." He met her gaze, or at least where he thought her gaze would be behind the veil. "Maybe I was curious. Curious people often regret it. Maybe," he said. "But they also find things others don't." That seemed to settle something, though he could not tell what. She stepped a little closer. Up close, he noticed something else. Her hands were steady now, no tremble like before. "You heard what they say about me," she said. He hesitated, then nodded. "Hard not to. And you believed it?" The question hung between them. The cowboy took a moment before answering. "I don't know what to believe yet. That is wise," she said quietly. Another silence followed, but this one felt different, less heavy. More like a space waiting to be filled. "Why didn't he lift the veil?" the cowboy asked. She did not answer right away. When she did, her voice was even softer. "Because once it is lifted, nothing can return to how it was." "That sounds like a warning." "It is." The cowboy leaned back slightly, studying her. "For me or for you?" "For both." The old man by the fire watched them without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. A group of warriors passed nearby, their conversation low but tense. The cowboy caught a few words. Something about tracks. Something about movement beyond the hills. Trouble. It seemed the old man had not been exaggerating. The veiled woman turned slightly, as if she had heard it too. "Things are changing," she said. "I got that feeling," the cowboy replied. She looked back at him. "And now you are part of it." He let out a small breath. "Still trying to figure out what that means." "You will?" she said. "Soon." There was something in the way she said it that made him uneasy. Not fear, not exactly. More like the sense that he had stepped into something much bigger than a simple trade for water and rest. The wind picked up again, moving through the camp, carrying dust and the faint scent of smoke. The cowboy stood slowly, his eyes scanning the horizon beyond the tents. Out there something was coming. He could feel it as surely as he could feel the ground beneath his boots. Behind him, the veiled woman remained still, waiting, and for the first time since he had entered the camp, the cowboy realized one thing with absolute certainty. The veil was not hiding what everyone thought it was. It was hiding something far more important. And whatever it was, it had everything to do with why he had been brought here. The day moved forward, but the feeling in the camp did not ease. It stayed tight, like a rope pulled too hard and ready to snap. The cowboy could sense it in the way people spoke less and looked more. Even the children stayed closer to their families, their laughter quieter, like they had been told without words that something was wrong. He spent the morning helping where he could. It felt like the right thing to do, and it gave him a reason to move instead of standing still with his thoughts. He carried water, checked on his horse, and helped repair a loose section of a shelter. No one stopped him, but no one fully welcomed him either. He was somewhere in between. Not a stranger anymore, but not one of them. As he worked, he noticed the warriors coming and going more often. They moved in small groups, speaking low, pointing toward the hills. Tracks had been found that much was clear. Tracks that did not belong to anyone in the camp. He caught part of a conversation between two younger men near the water supply. "They are closer than before," one said. "How many?" "Enough," that word stayed with him. "Enough for what?" When he turned, the veiled woman was standing a short distance away, watching him again. She had a way of appearing without warning, like she was always just outside the edge of his attention. "You are trying to understand," she said. He wiped his hands on his coat. "Hard not to. You see the movement." "The worry. I've seen camps like this before," he said. "When something's coming," she tilted her head slightly. "And what do you think is coming?" He looked out toward the hills where the land rolled uneven and dry. Could be raiders, could be soldiers. Could be something else? "Something else," she repeated, almost to herself. He looked back at her. "You don't sound convinced." "I am not," she said. That answer did not surprise him. Nothing about this place felt simple. Before he could ask more, a voice called out. One of the warriors was approaching, his face serious. "The chief wants to see you," he said. The cowboy nodded once. "Guess that means I should go." The warrior did not smile. It would be wise. The center of the camp felt different now than it had the day before. The same space, the same fire, but heavier. Like it had taken on the weight of everything no one was saying out loud. The chief stood waiting, his posture strong, his eyes sharp. "You have been watching," the chief said as the cowboy approached. "Hard not to notice things," the cowboy replied. "That can be dangerous, or useful," the cowboy said. For a moment, it seemed like the chief might take offense, but instead he nodded slowly. "We will see which one you are." The cowboy crossed his arms lightly. "You called me here." Might as well tell me why. The chief stepped closer to the fire, staring into it as if the answers were hidden in the flames. Men are moving across this land, he said. Not from our people. Not from yours. The cowboy frowned. That narrows it down some, but not much. They do not follow the usual paths, the chief continued. They do not leave signs meant to be seen. But we have found them. Scouts? The cowboy asked. Hunters, the chief said. That word carried a different kind of weight. The cowboy shifted slightly. Hunting what? The chief looked at him then, directly, without hesitation. Something that belongs to this camp. A chill ran through him, though the fire burned warm between them. You're talking about her. The chief did not confirm it with words, but he did not need to. The cowboy let out a slow breath. So this marriage, it's not just about me staying here. No, the chief said. It is about binding you to what is coming. That did not sit well. You could have said that from the start. You would not have understood. Try me, the cowboy said. The chief studied him for a long moment. Then he spoke again, slower this time. My daughter is not like the others, he said. She carries something that others fear, something they do not understand. The cowboy glanced back toward the edge of the camp where he had last seen her. I figured as much. There are those who believe power should be controlled, the chief continued. Or taken. And these men out there, the cowboy said, they're here for that. Yes. The words settled heavily between them. The cowboy rubbed the back of his neck. So where do I fit into all this? The chief's gaze sharpened. You are an outsider. You are not bound by the same ties as we are. That makes you both a risk and an opportunity. Sounds like I don't get much say in it. You already made your choice, the chief said. The cowboy could not argue with that. A sudden noise broke through the tension. One of the warriors rushed into the center of the camp, breathing hard. They've been seen, he said. Near the eastern ridge? The entire camp seemed to shift at once. The chief did not raise his voice, but his presence alone was enough. How many? 6, maybe more behind them. The cowboy's instincts kicked in immediately. That's not a full force. That's a test. The chief glanced at him. Explain. They're checking your defenses, the cowboy said. Seeing how you react. If they were coming to attack, you'd know it already. The warrior nodded slightly as if the idea made sense. The chief turned back to the fire, thinking, then they will return. Yeah, the cowboy said. With more, a silence followed, but it was different now. Not uncertain, focused, the chief looked at the warrior. Prepare the camp. No one moves alone. The warrior left quickly. The cowboy exhaled slowly. You've got a problem. We have a problem, the chief corrected. That was the second time he had been pulled into this as part of it. The cowboy did not argue. Instead, he looked toward the edge of the camp again. The veiled woman was gone. He found her not long after, standing near the horses, her posture still but her presence stronger somehow. You heard, he said. I always hear, she replied. He leaned against a nearby post. You want to tell me what makes you so important that people are willing to risk this? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, It is not about importance. Then what is it about? Fear. He studied her. People don't cross land like this just because they're afraid. No, she said. They cross it because they want to control what they fear. That made more sense. The cowboy looked down briefly, then back at her. And what exactly are they afraid of? She turned slightly toward him. Even through the veil, he could feel the weight of her gaze. What would you do, she asked, if you saw something that did not follow the rules you believed in? He shrugged. Depends on what it was. And if it could not be explained? Then I'd try harder to explain it. And if you couldn't? He paused. That was a harder question. Then I guess I'd decide whether it was a threat, he said. She nodded slightly. That is what they have decided. The wind picked up again, stronger this time. In the distance, beyond the hills, a faint movement caught his eye. Too far to see clearly, but enough to confirm one thing. They were being watched. The cowboy straightened, his hand resting near his side without thinking. They're not waiting long. No, she said. They never do. He looked at her again. When that veil comes off, what happens? She did not answer right away. When she did, her voice was steady, but there was something beneath it now. something heavier than before. Everything changes, she said. The cowboy felt a quiet tension settle deep in his chest. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. Behind them, the camp moved faster now, preparations, quiet orders, watchful eyes. The storm was building, and right at the center of it stood a man who had only wanted water, a chief who was guarding something he would not fully explain, and a woman whose face remained hidden for reasons that grew more dangerous by the hour. The cowboy glanced once more toward the distant ridge. Shapes moved there, small but real, closer than before. And for the first time, he understood something clearly. This was not just about survival anymore. This was about choosing a side in a fight he barely understood. And somehow, without realizing when it happened, he was already standing on one. By the time the sun began to drop, the camp had changed completely. What had once felt like a place of quiet rhythm now carried the sharp edge of preparation. Fires were kept low, voices stayed controlled, and every movement had purpose. The cowboy could feel it in his chest, the same way he had before a storm rolled in across open land. This time the storm had eyes. He stood near the outer edge, looking toward the eastern ridge where the scouts had seen movement. The light was fading, turning the hills into dark shapes against the sky. It would be harder to see soon, and that worked both ways. Behind him, the camp moved carefully. Warriors checked their gear, speaking in short, direct words. Elders gathered the children closer to the center, away from the edges. No one panicked, but no one ignored what was coming either. The chief walked past him without stopping, his presence steady, like a rock in fast water. People looked to him without needing to be told. Whatever happened next, it would be guided by him. The cowboy adjusted his stance, his hand resting near his side again. He had not planned to be part of this, but plans did not mean much anymore. He was here, and he had chosen to stay. That choice carried weight now. "You stand like a man who expects trouble," her voice came from behind him. He turned slightly. The veiled woman stood a few steps away, the fading light soft against her clothing. The veil moved gently with the wind, but it still hid everything it was meant to. "Out here," he said, "it's safer to expect trouble than to be surprised by it." She stepped closer, her movements calm despite everything around them. "And yet you stayed," he gave a small shrug. "Maybe I'm not as smart as I think." "That is not what I see," she said. He glanced at her. "What do you see?" "A man who does not run when things become unclear." He let out a quiet breath. "Or a man too tired to keep running." That seemed to land somewhere between them. For a moment they stood in silence, both looking toward the darkening hills. "It will come when the light is gone?" she said. "Yeah," he replied. "That's how it usually goes." A group of warriors moved past them, heading toward higher ground. Their eyes stayed forward, focused. The cowboy watched them go. "They're setting up a line," he said. "Yes? They think it'll be enough?" She did not answer right away. When she did, her voice was softer. "They think it will buy time." "Time for what?" He did not need to ask. He already knew. "For you," he said. She nodded once. The weight of that settled between them. "You still haven't told me what happens when they get what they want," he said. "They will try to use it," she replied. "And if they can't?" Her voice did not change. "Then they will try to destroy it." The cowboy looked at her more closely now. "You're talking about yourself like you're not even a person." "I am," she said. "But I'm also more than what they understand." That answer did not make things easier. A sudden sound broke through the air. A low signal from one of the scouts on the ridge, not loud but clear enough to carry. They were close. The camp reacted immediately. Warriors moved into position, spreading out but staying connected. Fires were dimmed further. The open spaces between shelters became paths of movement, not places to gather. The cowboy felt his heartbeat pick up, not from fear, but from readiness. This was a feeling he knew. Not the situation exactly, but the moment before something began. He glanced at the veiled woman. "You should be somewhere safer." She shook her head. "There is no safe place tonight." "That's not what I mean." "I know," she said. "But I will not hide." He studied her for a second, then nodded. "All right." Another signal came, closer this time. Shapes appeared on the ridge. Dark figures against darker ground. Not many, just as the scout had said. But enough. They're not rushing in, the cowboy said quietly. They are watching, she replied, trying to draw a reaction. They will get one. A group of warriors moved forward, stopping at a distance that held the line without breaking it. No one charged. No one called out. The space between the camp and the ridge became something tense and fragile. The cowboy stepped forward slightly, his eyes locked on the figures ahead. He could feel their presence even from here, still, patient. They're not just hunters, he said. No, she agreed. Feels like they're waiting for something. She turned her head toward him. They are... For what? Her answer came slowly. For me, that word hit harder now than before. The cowboy looked back toward the center of the camp. The chief stood there, watching everything, his posture unchanged. He was not surprised. That meant this was expected. They knew this would happen, the cowboy said. Yes, and they still stayed, yes, he exhaled slowly. Then there's more to this than just defense. She did not respond, but she did not need to. Another movement on the ridge caught his eye. One of the figures stepped forward just enough to be seen clearly against the sky, no weapon raised, no rush, just presence. They want to be seen, the cowboy said. They want to be understood, she corrected. Same thing sometimes, not always. The wind shifted, carrying a faint sound across the distance. A voice, but too far to make out the words. The warriors in front did not move. Neither did the figure on the ridge. It felt like a standoff built on silence instead of sound. The cowboy took a slow step forward. What are you doing? She asked. Figuring out what they want, he said. That is dangerous. So is standing still, before she could stop him. He moved a little farther ahead, not crossing the line the warriors had set, but close enough to show he was not hiding behind it. The figure on the ridge shifted slightly, noticing him. For a moment, everything held. Then, slowly, the figure raised a hand. Not in attack, not in surrender, something else. A signal. The cowboy felt something tighten in his chest. They're not here to rush in, he said quietly. They're here to take something without a fight. That is what they hope, she replied. And if they don't get it, they will try again, she said. Different way, yes. The sky darkened fully now, the last light fading beyond the hills. Torches flickered low in the camp, just enough to see without giving too much away. The cowboy stepped back toward her. They're testing you, he said. They already have. And... She turned toward him. For the first time, he noticed something different in her posture. Not fear, not hesitation, strength. I did not break, she said. The words carried a quiet certainty. A sudden movement from the ridge snapped his attention back. More figures appeared behind the first, not charging, just stepping into view. More than before. They're growing in number, he said. Yes, and they're not hiding it anymore? No. The line of warriors in front adjusted, tightening slightly. The chief stepped forward now, moving closer to the edge of the camp. Everything felt like it was reaching a point. Not yet breaking, but close. The cowboy looked at the veiled woman again. When this starts, he said, you stay close. She did not argue this time. Instead, she said something that made his chest tighten again. When this starts, it will not stop the way you expect. He frowned. What does that mean? She did not answer directly. Instead, she reached up slowly, her hand brushing the edge of the veil. The movement was small, but it carried more weight than anything else that had happened. The cowboy's breath caught slightly. Not yet, he said, almost without thinking. She paused. Soon, she replied. The figures on the ridge shifted again, closer now. The distance between them and the camp shrinking with each careful step. The warriors held their ground. The chief stood firm. The wind picked up once more, carrying dust and tension across the open space. Everything was ready to break. The cowboy could feel it in his bones. This was the moment before everything changed. And standing there, between the camp and the approaching figures, beside a woman whose truth was still hidden, he realized one thing clearly. Whatever happened next would decide more than just who stayed and who left. It would decide what the truth behind that veil really meant, and whether it would bring peace, or something far more dangerous. The first step came from the ridge. Not fast, not careless, just steady. The figures moved down the slope, one by one, like they had done this before. The kind of movement that did not waste energy, did not show fear. They knew exactly how close they could come without forcing a fight. The warriors at the front held their ground. No one rushed forward. No one broke formation. The space between the two sides grew smaller, and with every step, the air felt tighter. The cowboy stood still, his eyes locked on the lead figure. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing in from all sides. Behind him, the camp was silent, waiting. Beside him, the veiled woman did not move. The lead figure stopped at a distance where both sides could see clearly. A man stepped forward from among them. He wore no markings the cowboy recognized, no colors that tied him to any one place. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "We are not here to fight," the man called out. His voice carried easily across the space. The chief stepped forward from the camp. "You come with many men," he replied. "That is not the way of peace. We come with caution," the man said. "Not aggression?" The cowboy watched closely. The tone was careful, measured. This was not a man looking for chaos. This was a man looking for control. "You have something that does not belong to you," the man continued. The words landed exactly where they were meant to. The chief did not react outwardly, but the silence behind him shifted. "It belongs to us," the chief said firmly. The man tilted his head slightly. "That is where you are wrong." The cowboy felt the tension rise another step. "They are not here to guess," he said quietly to the veiled woman. "They're certain. They have convinced themselves," she replied. "That's worse," he muttered. The man on the other side took another step forward. "We have seen what she can do," he said. "We understand it in ways you do not." A ripple of unease moved through the camp. The cowboy glanced at the veiled woman. "You've crossed paths with them before?" "Yes." "And they walked away?" "They ran," she said. That told him enough. The chief's voice cut through the air again. "You will not take her." The man's expression did not change. "Then you will force what comes next." A long pause followed. The kind that made every heartbeat feel louder. The cowboy stepped forward just enough to stand slightly ahead of the chief. It was not a move of disrespect, it was instinct. "You're not here for a fight," the cowboy called out. "But you're not leaving without trying." The man's eyes shifted to him. "And you are?" "Someone who's been on both sides of a bad decision," the cowboy replied. A faint smile touched the man's face. "Then you should understand why we are here." "I understand wanting control," the cowboy said. "I just don't think you're going to get it." The man's smile faded slightly. "You think this is about control. It is about safety." "For who?" the cowboy asked. "For everyone," the man answered. The cowboy shook his head. "That's usually what people say right before they make things worse." A murmur passed through the men behind the speaker, but he raised a hand slightly, silencing them. "You speak boldly for someone who does not know the truth," the man said. "Then tell it," the cowboy replied. The man looked past him, toward the veiled woman. "She is not just different," he said. "She is dangerous." The word hung in the air. The cowboy did not turn, but he could feel her presence behind him, steady as before. "Dangerous doesn't always mean wrong," he said. "It does when it cannot be controlled," the man replied. The cowboy let out a slow breath. "You keep saying that word, controlled. Sounds like that's what this is really about." The man did not deny it. The chief stepped forward again. "You will leave," he said. "Or you will face what comes from staying." The line had been drawn. The man looked at him, then at the warriors, then back toward the cowboy. "You are choosing to stand with them," he said. The cowboy nodded once. "I already did." The silence that followed was different this time, final. The man studied him for a long moment, as if weighing something. Then he spoke again, quieter now. "Then you should at least know what you are protecting." The cowboy felt something shift behind him, a small movement. The veiled woman stepped forward. "Enough," she said. Her voice carried clearly, stronger than before. Every eye turned to her. "This ends now." The chief looked at her, something unreadable passing through his expression. "Are you certain?" "Yes," she said. The cowboy turned slightly. "You don't have to do this." "I do," she replied. Her hand rose slowly again to the edge of the veil. This time there was no hesitation. The wind seemed to pause with her. The camp held its breath. The men on the other side watched closely, their focus sharp and unblinking. The cowboy felt his chest tighten, then the veil lifted, not rushed, not dramatic, just a simple movement, and the truth came into the open. For a moment nothing happened. Then everything changed. There was no shock in the way the cowboy had expected. No fear in the way the others had whispered. Instead there was silence, real silence. The kind that came when something did not match the story people had built in their minds. She was not what they had called her. Not ugly, not broken, not something to hide in shame. There was a calm strength in her face, something steady and clear. But more than that, there was something in her eyes. Something that felt deep, alive. The cowboy felt it the moment he looked. Not power in a loud sense. Not something wild or out of control. Something grounded, like the land itself. The men on the ridge shifted uneasily. The leader's expression changed, just slightly. "You see," he said, though his voice was less certain now. "This is exactly what I meant." The cowboy shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "This is exactly what you didn't understand." The veiled woman stepped forward fully now, the cloth falling back behind her shoulders. "I am not what you fear," she said. Her voice was steady, clear, carrying across the space. "But I will not be taken," she added. The wind picked up again, moving through the camp, through the space between both sides. For a moment, it felt like something unseen passed through it too. Not force, not threat. Just presence. The men on the ridge reacted, not with attack. With hesitation. The leader raised a hand again, but this time it was not a signal to move forward. It was a signal to stop. He looked at her, really looked this time. Something in his expression shifted. Understanding, maybe, or doubt. "You could be a danger," he said, but the certainty was gone. "So could you," she replied. The words landed clean, no anger, no fear. Just truth. The cowboy watched the man carefully. This was the moment, the choice. The leader looked at his men, then back at the camp. "This is not over," he said finally. "No," the chief replied. "But it does not continue tonight." The man held his gaze for a long second. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Not tonight," he turned, signaling his men. One by one they stepped back. Not running, not defeated, but leaving. The tension did not break all at once. It loosened slowly, like a knot being untied, one careful move at a time. The cowboy let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. The warriors stayed in place until the figures disappeared back over the ridge. Only then did the camp begin to move again. Quietly at first, then with relief. The cowboy turned to her. The veil rested at her shoulders now, no longer hiding anything. "You could have done that from the start," he said. She shook her head slightly. "They would not have seen it then? And now?" "Now they doubt," she said. "And doubt slows fear," he nodded. "That might be enough. For now," she replied. The chief approached them, his expression softer than before. "You have done what I hoped," he said to her. "And what you planned," the cowboy added. The chief looked at him. "Plans only work when people choose them." The cowboy gave a small smile. "Guess I made the right one." The old man from the fire stepped closer, watching them both. "The storm is past," he said quietly. "For now," the cowboy replied. The old man nodded. "That is how most storms are." The night settled again, but this time it felt different, lighter. Not because the danger was gone, but because something had shifted. The cowboy looked around the camp. People moved more freely now, voices returned. The weight had lifted, even if only a little. He looked back at her. "What happens next?" he asked. She met his gaze. "We move forward," she said, "not in fear, not in hiding. And the marriage?" he asked. A faint smile touched her face. "That was your choice," she said. He thought about that for a moment. About the road behind him, about the camp around him, about the moment he had stepped into something he did not understand, and how it had led him here. "I don't regret it," he said. "Good," she replied. The wind moved softly across the plains again, but this time it carried something different, not silence. Not tension, something closer to peace. The cowboy looked out toward the ridge one last time. They had left. But the story was not about them anymore. It was about what remained. A choice made in a moment of pressure, a truth revealed at the edge of fear. and the understanding that sometimes what people hide is not weakness. It is strength waiting for the right moment to be seen. He turned back toward the camp, toward the people who had once been strangers, toward a future he had not planned but had chosen anyway. And for the first time in a long while, the road ahead did not feel empty.